Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Exalted One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Venerable members of the Mahasangha, friends in the Dhamma, in this discussion we hope to discuss one of the main discourses in Buddhism, Avijja Sutta, the discourse of ignorance, which comes in Anguttara Nikaya. This discourse is selected because of that this discourse explains the gradual path in Buddhism. When we see the Buddha's message, it is very clear that we can see a very gradual path in Buddhism from beginning to end. Buddha has explained an example like the ocean. According to the Avijja Sutta, the Supreme Buddha says the sasana or Dhamma is like the ocean. The ocean deepens gradually from beach to the deeper water. Like that, Buddhism or Buddha's message or sasana, the dispensation of the Buddha, also like that. It is like Anupupa Sikha, Anupupa Kiriya, Anupupa Patipada. Gradual discipline or training, gradual process and gradual practice. That is why the disciples are interested in practicing this message. Like the asuras are interested in living in the ocean because of this quality, monks or disciples of the Buddha also like that. They are happy to live in this sasana because of this characteristic, because of this quality. Sasana deepens gradually. In this discourse, we can see 10 steps, the path that leads to getting rid of suffering, liberation or emancipation. First of all, I would like to explain the nature of avidya or ignorance. Ignorance is the main cause of suffering. Craving is the nearest reason and avidya is the main reason. And also, all Buddhist doctrines focus on giving knowledge, understanding or wisdom, panya. Panya is the opposite of ignorance. All Buddhist doctrines focus on getting rid of avidya. For that, Buddha has explained a gradual path. In Avijja Sutta, we can see this gradual path. There are main unwholesome mental states that disturb our peace of mind. They are lobha, dosa and moha. Lobha means craving or attachment or desire. Dosa means anger, hatred or ill will. Moha means delusion or ignorance. These are the main causes of suffering. When we see these three causes, Buddhism has explained the nature of these three unwholesome mental roots. Lobha is explained like Danda Viraga Alpa Savajya. Danda Viraga means it is difficult to overcome. And Alpa Savajya, the results are less harmful. And also anger is explained as Kippa Viraga Mahasavajya. Kippa Viraga means anger is easy to overcome, but results are more harmful. And also avidya or moha, ignorance, Danda Viraga Mahasavajya. It is very difficult to overcome and also it is more harmful. Results are more harmful. This is the nature of these three unwholesome mental roots, unwholesome roots, lobha, dosa, and moha. In the primary level, there are some techniques that we can overcome greed and anger. However, finally, we have to overcome ignorance completely. There are several techniques that Buddha has explained to overcome these negativities in some levels, such as practicing generosity. We can overcome some levels of greed or attachment. By practicing sila virtue, we can overcome some levels of our anger or greed. By practicing loving kindness meditation, we can overcome anger in some levels. Finally, Buddha says the final solution, how we overcome ignorance completely, by practicing mindfulness. When we start our spiritual journey practicing mindfulness, we should have clear understanding about the path. Path is very important. Would always encourage us to gain right understanding, samadhi. Samadhi is right understanding that is highly appreciated and recommended in Buddhism. Buddha says, Samma Ditti Pure Javam. Samadhi or right understanding is first. That is very important. Vision is first, then mission. Mission without vision is blind. In this situation, both vision and mission are very important. That is why Buddha says, when we practice sila or virtue, we should have correct understanding, vision, before practicing sila. That is why Avijja Sutta says, Dittincha anupagamma silava. Without going to extremes, we should follow virtue or the first step of spiritual path, foundation of spiritual path, sila or virtue. And also samadhi also like that. When we practice samadhi, we should have clear understanding what is the purpose of practicing concentration meditation. These three things, sila, samadhi, and panya, are interrelated. When we see the Buddha's message, we can see the order of the Dhamma. That is a very clear order. That is why when the Supreme Buddha explained his message, he followed the gradual path. Dana kata, sila kata, sagga kata, kamanang adinavang, okarang sankilesang, nekkamme kanisansang. There is a gradual path. When Buddha meets a person, first of all, Buddha explains Dana kata, the stories of generosity. Sila kata, the stories of virtue. Sagga kata, the stories of going to heaven or a blissful life. Kamanang adinavang, the danger of sensual pleasure. Nekkamme kanisansang, the results of renunciation. Like that, there is a gradual path, it is very clear. When listener's mind is very calmful, Buddha explains the next level, Samukkansika Desana, very special sermon of a Buddha. The very first things belong to Anupubbi Katha, gradual instruction. Then the next step is that Samukkansika Desana, which consists with the Four Noble Truths. This is the path that Buddha has explained. When we see the Buddha's message, we should understand when we listening to a sermon, we should be wise that that sermon explains whether heavenly path or the deliverance path, or both. As audience, as listeners, we always should be wise. We always should have clear understanding about the speech or sermon. Sometimes speakers explain the heavenly path. The foundation of heavenly path is that understanding the karmic law. Whatever we do with intention, according to our mental states, we will have the same results. If mind is pure, the results are fruitful. And also, if mind is impure or wicked, the results are negative. With this understanding, we enter the first part of the Sammaditthi, Kammasakata Sammaditthi. As the result of this understanding, we always overcome evils and practice good deeds. As the result of this path, we are able to become a blissful life hereafter. And also, the second level is very important. Understanding the Four Noble Truths for dependent origination. Here, we should understand the nature of ignorance. Understanding ignorance is very, very important. The very main explanation about ignorance is that unknowing the Four Noble Truths. Dukkha Ajnanam, Dukkha Samudaya Ajnanam, Dukkha Nirodha Ajnanam, Dukkha Nirodhagamini Patipadaya Ajnanam. If someone doesn't know the Four Noble Truths, that is ignorance or delusion, Avijja. Here, we have heard about Dukkha Satya various times, but we should have complete understanding about the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. When Western society people listening to suffering, sometimes they misunderstand. The reason is that they have no clear understanding the meaning of suffering. The reason is that dukkha in Pali language is very difficult to translate it to another language. Dukkha has a very special meaning. In the primary level, we see that jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, birth is suffering, death is suffering, jara is suffering. These are the primary level understanding of suffering or dukkha. But when we go to the deeper level, it has a deep meaning. Our complete understanding depends on understanding the Four Noble Truths. Here there is a very special sentence in Buddhism. I think already our reverences, you know the meaning of the suffering or dukkha satya. But when we refer the Abhidhamma Pitaka, Yamaka Pakarana, in such a Yamaka, there is a very special explanation about the suffering. I think most of you know Pali language very well. You can understand that sentence. There, dukkha satya is explained. Kāyikan dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ tapetva avasesaṃ dukkha satya. Kāyika dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ tapetva avasesaṃ dukkha satyam. This is the first sentence. The next sentence is that kāyika dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ, dukkhaṃ dukkha satyam. This is the very important explanation in Buddhism about the Four Noble Truths. Kāyikan dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ tapetva avasesaṃ dukkha satyam. If there are anything except physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering. When someone listening to this one, they were surprised. They may ask, if there are anything except physical suffering and mental suffering? Nobody knows it, except a Buddha. Buddha is the person, the first time in this eon, who realized, discovered, and proclaimed to the world this message. Is there anything physical suffering and mental suffering? That is the noble truth of suffering. And also again Buddha says, physical suffering and mental suffering are that suffering and the noble truth of suffering. Here there is a difference between suffering and the noble truth of suffering. Suffering can be realized by anyone. Even our Buddha, before he did his renunciation, he understood the normal suffering. When he met his friend Channa, he explained some sufferings such as Jara, Vyadi, Marana, decay, death, and aging. He realized. After he attained enlightenment, he explains very clearly, Pubbe anunusutesu dhammesu chakku mudapadi, jnana mudapadi, panya mudapadi. I realized something that before I didn't hear. I realized something when I attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree that I never heard. Then it is clear that his understanding is not same with that he had before. Here it is very important to understand the real meaning of dukkha satya. Physical suffering and mental suffering. Except those sufferings, there is something. What is that? It is that when we have some experience through our senses, when we look at something, when we hear something, when we smell something, when we taste something, when we touch something, when we think something, the very first experience is the result of our previous actions. The contact moment, when we contact something at the moment, the present experience is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. The very present experience is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neutral. However, because our mind is very fast, we think that we recognize something through our eye consciousness. Actually, we can contact something through our eye, ear, tongue, nose, or body. But when we recognize something, the very first experience has ceased. We recognize everything through our mind consciousness. That is not the important thing. The important thing is that when we recognize something through our mind consciousness, the very first experience has already ceased without remaining anything. That is why Buddha says, Na panchahi vinyanehi kinchi dhammam pativijanati. We usually say that I recognize something through my eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness. We usually say it. In Tripitaka, in Sutta Pitaka also we can see it. But when we go to the deeper level, Buddha says very clearly, we are unable to recognize something completely through our eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, or tongue consciousness. Sabbe dhamma mano vijnana dhatuya vinyeya. Everything should be realized by mind consciousness. This is the place where we can understand Buddhist wisdom. Understanding the Four Noble Truths depend on understanding this truth. The very first experience is the noble truth of suffering. Although it says as dukkha, actually that is not a painful suffering. It is just a truth. Dukkha satya means it is not just feeling something. It is an eternal truth. The very first experience we can get some idea, very primary level understanding. Varna Rupa, Saddha Rupa, Gandha Rupa, we get these things in our first experience as the result of our karmic energy. As the result of our karma, avijja, trishna, as the result of these reasons, we always create our senses. According to our senses, when we contact external objects, we get some primary level understanding. But that is not the complete understanding. We understand something completely through our mind consciousness. This is the reality. Again, Buddha says physical suffering and mental suffering are the suffering and the noble truth of suffering. It means Jatipi dukkha, Jarapi dukkha, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering, separation from that we like is suffering. These are the suffering that everyone can understand. That is suffering. Not only that is suffering, that says as the noble truth of suffering. What is the reason? Reason is that that suffering depends on the first experience, which is the noble truth of suffering. After the first experience ceased, we recognize something, but it depends on the first experience. Therefore, aging, decay, sickness, death, these are also the noble truth of suffering. But very special thing that we should understand, the very first experience is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. That is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neutral. That is just a result of our previous actions. Whenever we are suffering, it means we are ignorant. What is the nature of ignorance? Ignorance means, in short, when we see something, when we hear something, we think that still there is something outside. I recognize something at the moment which is in the outside world. That is the nature of ignorance or delusion. When we think there is something outside at the moment, actually we depend on outside. If we depend on outside, when outside world changes, we are suffering. Buddhism has explained this ignorance. This is the very worst darkness in the world. Avijja Paramamalam. This delusion is the worst delusion or defilement in this world. If we want to overcome suffering, we should know how suffering arises. When we see something, when we hear something, actually the first experience has ceased. We can contact something at the present moment. But when we recognize, when we understand something, the very first experience has ceased. And also when we recognize something, the outside world has ceased. This is the truth of suffering. If you have this understanding, if you are mindful at this moment, as soon as we look at something, if we know that this physical world has ceased at the moment, we depend on inside. Then very special thing is that we can never recognize forms, material world at the present moment. But we should understand very clearly, Buddhism is not idealism. Vijnanavada. Buddhism is not idealism. Why is that? Buddhism explains 5 aggregates. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Forms, Vedana feelings, Sanya perception, Sankhara mental formations, and Vijnana consciousness. These 5 things are proclaimed by the Blessed One. There is a form in this world. We can contact something, but when we recognize something, the very first experience has ceased. Entire Buddhism is that understanding 5 aggregates and living in the 4 aggregates. Apariyapanna bhumi. There is a very special word in Buddhism, apariyapanna bhumi. Apariyapanna bhumi means very special understanding place. When we attain Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahanta, and when we live in the Arahantship, we live in Apariyapanna bhumi. Apariyapanna bhumi depends on 4 aggregates, no forms. Still, at this moment also we live with 4 aggregates. But we usually say that 5 aggregates. It is a very deep topic. Later we will discuss this. Actually, in the next lessons, we will discuss this thing. Don't worry. If you can't understand again and again, we will explain this one, okay? That is not the main topic in this speech, but here we are going to explain the qualities of the Dhamma and the order of the Dhamma. Buddha's message can be divided into two. One of them is the path of heaven or blissful life, and also path of deliverance. The path of a blissful life depends on the karmic law and in the samsaric circle. When we practice 3 meritorious deeds again and again, we can have a blissful life hereafter. That is not explained in this speech. Here we are going to explain the next level, the deliverance path. When we discuss the deliverance path, it has an order. In this discourse, the discourse of Avijja, ignorance, explains the 10 steps of our spiritual path. That is very important. If we know these 10 steps, it is very clear what we practice, what are the qualities that we have to pass on the path of liberation. Buddha says, our final goal is liberation and understanding, Vidya Vimukti, knowledge and liberation. That is the final goal. That final goal we are unable to develop. That is just a result. I think you, Venerable says, you know the Noble Eightfold Path. Atthanga Samanagato Seko, Dasanga Samanagato Arahant. When someone becomes the arahantship, he receives some results, Samma Jnana and Samma Vimukti, right knowledge and right liberation. Here also the 10th step or the final goal is that attaining knowledge and liberation. For that, we have to practice 7 enlightenment factors. Satta, Bojjhanga. This discourse explains that if we want to achieve the knowledge and liberation or emancipation, we have to practice Satta Bojjhanga or 7 enlightenment factors. If we want to develop 7 enlightenment factors, we have a path. There is foundation or field, which is that the fourfold mindfulnesses. If we want to complete 7 enlightenment factors, we have a path. The path is that mindfulness or the fourfold mindfulnesses. If we want to practice fourfold mindfulnesses, we should have some qualities. What they are? Trivida Sucharita. Discipline in our speech, behavior and mind. Kaya Sucharita, Vati Sucharita, Mano Sucharita. If we want to practice these 3 disciplines, we have a foundation. We should practice something. What is that? It is that Indriya Samvara, the discipline in senses, 6 senses. If we want to practice clearly the discipline in 6 senses, we have a path. What is the path? Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness and clear comprehension. If we want to practice Sati Sampajanya, there is a path. What is that? Yoniso Manasikara, wise reflection, wise consideration. If we want to practice Yoniso Manasikara, wise consideration or wise reflection, there are some reasons. What they are? If we want to practice Yoniso Manasikara or wise reflection, we should have confidence or Saddha. We should be confident in what the Blessed One explains. Saddha. There is a foundation for Saddha or confidence. What is the nearest reason of confidence or Saddha? The nearest reason of Saddha or confidence is that listening to Dhamma. Listening to Dhamma. If we want to listen to Dhamma, we have another reason. What is that? Sappurisa Sanseva or Kalyanamit Asava. Associating good friends, associating spiritual friends. This is the path. We receive good association because of our previous good karmas. That is why always when we do a meritorious act, we say that imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satan samagamo yava nibbana pacca, like that. As the result of this meritorious act, may I have the good friends until I attain the nibbana, not bad friends. That is our blessing, our wish. Actually, we should have not only having the good friends, but we should be wise to understand who the good friends are. In the present world, actually, we have received a lot of good friends, but we are not clever to understand them. Then we are like the spoon. A spoon doesn't know the taste of the curries or food. Dabbi supara sanyata. We should be wise to understand the correct noble friends and spiritual friends. That is very important. Buddha says there are three things it is very important about the Kalyana Mitta. Kalyana Mittata, Kalyana Sahayata, Kalyana Sampavankata. There are three things about the good association. We should have good friends, that is Kalyana Mittata, and also Kalyana Sahayata. We should associate with them. We should make them friends. That is also very important. And also, not only that, Kalyana Sampavankata. We should pay attention to what they say. These three things are very important. If you have these qualifications, we listen to Dhamma. We develop our Dhamma knowledge. As the result of Dhamma knowledge, we develop our confidence or Saddha. As the result of Saddha or confidence, we develop Yoniso Manasikara. As the result of practicing Yoniso Manasikara, we develop Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness and wise comprehension. As the result of this path, we can develop discipline in our senses and also three disciplines, fourfold mindfulnesses, the seven enlightenment factors, and we are able to achieve the final goal, knowledge and liberation, Vidya Vimukti. This is the gradual path. The very first thing is we should recognize who the spiritual friends are. Then we should listen to Dhamma. Here especially we listen to the liberation, the deliverance path. Deliverance path can be divided into two that we listen to usually. One of them is that Upada Nirodha. Upada Nirodha means the cessation to arise, and also Anupada Nirodha, the cessation not to arise again. This is very, very, very important. Upada Nirodha and Anupada Nirodha. Upada Nirodha means when we say that this computer is changing, this is impermanent, this will be broken. When scientists, they do experiments dividing atoms like that. That is the Upada Nirodha. They take something with ignorance. After their first experience ceased, they take something as it is in outside Then they divided it, and also they think that there is something which is changing. Here, changing and impermanence are different. This is also very important. The changing and impermanence. The changing can be realized by everyone, even scientists. They can understand the changing. It is very easy to understand. But impermanence is not like that. The changing is explained in Buddhism as viparinama. Impermanence in Buddhism is that anicca. Anicca has a deep meaning. Viparinama always depends on the outside world in the conventional truth. But anicca or impermanence depend on the absolute truth, ultimate truth. The nature of impermanence or anicca, the real meaning of that anicca is that ahutva sambhutam hutva nabhavisati. Not being occurred comes to occurrence. Being occurred will not go to occurrence. Not being occurred comes to occurrence. Being occurred will not go to occurrence. The present experience did not come to the present, and also the present experience will not go to future from the present. Iti imasmin satidang hoti, imasmin asatidang hoti. When this is, this is. When this is not, this is not. Every moment, according to our mental condition, we create the world. We create our senses. According to our internal senses, we experience the outside world, and also we experience five aggregates. That five aggregates always arise and cease. Our eye is impermanent. This eye is not just a physical eye, but the scene of the ability of seeing. The eye also impermanent. What is the meaning of impermanent? This present moment, the ability of seeing didn't come to the present from the past. This ability will not go to future from the present. It arises and ceases at the moment. Forms are also impermanent. Those forms arise at the moment according to our senses. Our senses depends on our mental situation. The world, every moment we create. The interesting thing is that when we experience the material world, when we recognize this material world, the material world has completely ceased. We recognize everything through our mind consciousness. This is the knowledge that we receive throughout listening to Dhamma with the association of good friends. If we have this Dhamma knowledge, we are confident in the Buddha's message, Saddhati Tathagatassa Bodhi. Confidence in what the Supreme Buddha realized, discovered. If we have confidence in this Dhamma, then we understand when we are ignorant. If we think there is a material world outside at the moment, it means we depend on outside. If we depend on outside, as Bhanteji said, when we buy one, we get one free. When we get the world as there is something outside, we will buy something free, which is suffering. When the outside world changes, then automatically we are suffering. If we know that now I experience something through my mind consciousness, then outside world is unable to control us. We depend on inside. This is the freedom. This is the liberation. This is the emancipation explained by the Buddha. This is the place where we should be confident in. If we have this confidence, our energy, our effort, our inner motivation gradually increases. We are hurried to practice this message. What is the reason? If we don't practice this message, we depend on outside. It means outside world can control us. They can bring us suffering. With this understanding, we need the freedom. We find the solution, emancipation, liberation within us. Then we start our spiritual journey. We practice Yoniso Manasikara. Buddha says, I don't see any other important thing except Yoniso Manasikara. Yoniso Manasikara is the most important thing on the path of liberation. What is the meaning of Yoniso Manasikara? Or wise consideration? The way how we think that not suffering arises. And also the way how we think not defilements arise in our mind. There are a lot of techniques that we can use in Yoniso Manasikara. When someone blames us, if we think that is a stupid person, that is a mad person, that is also one of the ways that we can think with Yoniso Manasikara. And also, when we practice generosity, that is also one of the ways that we can practice Yoniso Manasikara. By practicing generosity, we overcome our attachment. We purify our mind. By practicing sila, we can overcome some sufferings. By practicing loving kindness and other concentration and meditation techniques, we can overcome hindrances, 5 hindrances. We can purify our mind. And also with the experience of jhana, we can live like Brahma beings in the Brahma realm. These are the results that we receive throughout practicing Yoniso Manasikara. The highest quality, the highest way that we can practice Yoniso Manasikara is that reflecting on impermanence, ahutva sambhutang hutvana bhavisati. Not being occurred comes to occurrence, being occurred will not go to occurrence. Even our present thought. Finally, we have to reflect on one thing, which is mind. The present moment, present consciousness, mind consciousness. That mind consciousness didn't come to the present from the past. It will not go to future from the present. It arises with the conditions at the moment, and also it immediately ceases at the moment. This is the way how we practice Yoniso Manasikara. And little by little we go forward. When we have Yoniso Manasikara or wise consideration, we practice Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness and comprehension. Little by little we develop our mindfulness. And also we practice Sampajanya or wisdom too. Furthermore, we go forward and discipline in our senses. We always take care of our senses, eye, ear, nose, like that. We keep some watchers in our senses. When we see something, when we hear something, we do everything consciously, mindfully, keeping some watchers near our senses. Indriya Samvara. When we have Indriya Samvara, discipline in senses, then we go to the next level, 3 disciplines. Kaya Sucharita, Vachi Sucharita, Mano Sucharita. The worthy one advised Reverend Rahula. Dear Rahula, when you behave, when you do something, please think again and again whether it is correct. When you speak something, reflect on it again and again whether it is correct. When you think something, you have to think it again and again whether it is correct or incorrect. This is the way how we can practice three disciplines in our three doors. Our action, our speech, and our thoughts. And also we go to the next level, next step of the Avijja Sutta. What is that? Fourfold mindfulnesses. Satara Satipatthana, Chattari Satipatthana. This is the field of our spiritual father. With this understanding, now we dedicate our entire life for our spiritual life, practicing mindfulness. Whenever we live in mindfulness, it means we are near the Father, our spiritual Father, the Supreme Buddha. We have no fear, no problems, no suffering whenever we live in mindfulness. It means we have created the refuge within us. We are out of control of others. And also, whenever we are away from mindfulness, it means we are near the Mara. It means he can control us. He can bring us suffering. This is the place where we can show our skillfulness. Mindfulness is the only way for liberation. In the suttas, it is said very clearly, when we practice fourfold mindfulnesses correctly, according to what the Buddha taught, all other spiritual faculties, qualities, according to 37 enlightenment factors, we can develop all things if we practice mindfulness correctly. As the result of practicing fourfold mindfulnesses, the contemplation of our body, when we are aware of our body, when we are mindful in our body, in the first level, we focus on the present moment with our body, and also we contemplate on that how our body arises. Our body is the result of our food that we have taken. As the result of food or nutrition, we have the body. As the result of cessation of food, the body also ceases, arising and ceasing, understanding the causality, cause and effect. And also we contemplate on feeling. Feeling arises through our six senses. That feeling also arises and ceases every moment with some results. When contact arises, feeling arises. When contact ceases, feeling ceases. This feeling is not just a particular person. This feeling doesn't belong to any particular person. This is just a feeling which arises because of some reasons. We see the causality, cause and effect. Then we don't have any attachment with our feelings, no matter whether they are pleasant or unpleasant. And also, Chittanupassana, contemplating on consciousness. Consciousness also divided into six. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, like that. One consciousness arises at once. That consciousness arises and ceases with some reasons. Nama rupa paccaya vijnana. Consciousness arises because of mentality and corporeality. Nama Rupa Pacha Vijnana. When mentality and corporeality cease, the present consciousness also ceases. This consciousness is not just a particular person, it is a result of some reasons. When reasons cease, the result also ceases. And finally, Dhammanupassana, contemplating on mental formations, sanya and sankhara, perception and mental formations. That also arises because of contact. When contact ceases, the mental formations also cease. This is the way how we practice mindfulness according to what the Buddha taught. When we practice mindfulness, the 7 enlightenment factors gradually increase. Sattabojjhanga, Sati Sambojjhanga, Dhammavijja Sambojjhanga, Virya Sambojjhanga, Passadhi Sambojjhanga, Samadhi Sambojjhanga, Upekha Sambojjhanga. These are the 7 enlightenment factors. As the result of living in mindfulness, gradually these spiritual faculties increase. Sati Sambojjhanga, mindfulness, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. Dhammavijja Sambojjhanga, keen investigation. Virya Sambojjhanga, effort like that. These things gradually increase. We always live with these 7 enlightenment factors. Now, these are our friends. Now we have met spiritual friends, the teachings of the Buddha. Always we live with the Dhamma. Dhammo havirakkati Dhammacharing. He who practices Dhamma is protected by the Dhamma. The very primary protection is that we never fall into hell as the result of this practice. Not only that, little by little, we overcome 5 hindrances. 5 hindrances. Sensual pleasure, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, skeptical doubts. These are the real enemies who disturb our peace of mind. We don't give any chance to these enemies to steal our inner qualities. The most important thing that we receive in our life is that our mind. We should love our mind. Mind is the main reason whether we are happy or unhappy. When mind is polluted with negative thoughts, we are unhappy. If our mind is pure and calm, we are happy. Nobody likes to be unhappy or suffering. Everyone who was born in this world likes to be happy. Therefore, happiness is the main thing that we wish. Santutti Paramandanam. Contentment is the greatest happiness. Therefore, we always purify our mind by practicing this path. As the result of practicing this path, and also as the result of our effort, understanding and impermanence, we are able to liberate from suffering. Vimuttasmin vimuttamiti jnanam hoti. According to our liberation or emancipation, we are understanding how much suffering I have overcome. Vimuttasmin vimuttamiti jnanam hoti. We have understanding. Now I have no anger at the moment. I have no sensual desire at the moment. I have no lust at the moment. I have no ignorance at the moment. Since I don't depend on outside, now I am reflecting on impermanence inside. Reflecting inside means inside meditation. When we see something, present moment we see something outside, but the reason is inside, that the cause, the main state has already ceased. When we look at something, if we can understand it, the first experience has ceased, then we don't depend on outside. It is like that. When we sit somewhere, we are unable to place where we are sitting. We always look at front. When you drive, you never look at where you are in. Where you are in? You are in four wheels. But always we look at front. But we are here where we passed. When we go somewhere, we look at front. But our feet are here. We always live in the past experience. But our ignorance doesn't believe it. Our ignorance always says that you are in front. When we go in somewhere at night, we use some flashlight. When we are going somewhere, if we see a snake, we are suddenly afraid of that. Why is that? What is the reason that we are afraid of seeing a snake? The reason is that we think that now I am in where the flashlight is. That is why we are afraid of. But we are in back. Like that. We are always naturally in back. But our ignorance says that you are in front. That is why we are suffering. That is why we have problems. For that, we have to understand this path. Even though there are 10 steps here, according to audience, Buddha has summarized these 10 steps in various ways. These 10 steps can be summarized into 4. According to some discourses, Buddha has explained we have to practice 4 things. Associating good friends, listening to Dhamma, wise consideration, and practice. Again, Buddha summarized these things in 2. As a wise person, we have to practice only 2 things, concentration and insight meditation. Finally, Buddha says, you have to practice only 1 thing, which is wisdom or panya. As Buddha explained the discourse of Bahya to Bahya, evam hite Bahya sikitabang ditte dittamatam bhavisati. In short, Buddha has explained in his message to some very gifted persons like Pukusati, Bahya Darucherya. Those are the persons who are very gifted. For them, Buddha has explained his message in short. Finally, we have to practice only 1 thing, wisdom, reflecting on impermanence. Okay, this is the very short explanation about the Avijja Sutta. If you have to ask something, this is the time to it. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dukkam pantāca niddukkhaṃ bhayam pantāca nibhayāṃ sokam pantāca nissokāṃ hontu sabbe pipānino. Dukin pelena sat dukin midetva bien pelena sat bien ati vetva
සොරින්ත වෙනසත් සොම්නස් වෙත්වා නිතින් මේ හැම සත් සුවපත් වෙත්වා